For this project, I started with a 34 by 28 inch old window that I picked up at a local shop called Scavengers. They sell old windows there for $25 a piece. I felt like the window panes were in there that good enough that I did not need to put the caulk around the perimeter, but I did put the painter's tape around the perimeter of the windows just as an extra precaution against resin leaks. Next, I purchased some stained glass from Hobby Lobby, and I used this to make the stems and the leaves out of. Now, I'm not an expert stained glass cutter, but I did learn how to cut glass on YouTube, and it's really not that difficult to cut things like stems and maybe a few leaves and that. If you're interested, I would watch a YouTube video on how to do it. And then I cut out some leaves also for the sunflowers that I'm going to be making. And you'll see me breaking leaves and everything else. Like I said, I'm not an expert at it, but I can, use my nippers then and kind of reshape whatever it is that I damage. When I was done cutting out my stems and my leaves, I put them into my MJR 40-pound tumbler to smooth out the sides. Stained glass is very sharp. You have to be careful. This time I did my stems separate from my leaves because last time I had a problem with a bunch of my stems breaking. I think I had overloaded it. And this is how they turned out. Now, people who work with stained glass, I don't think it's typical for them to put them in a tumbler, but they take a sander and can sand off the edges if they want them to be smooth. Now, it's not absolutely necessary, of course, to tumble stained glass to use in your projects. I just prefer to do that. I believe the stems I tumbled for like 4 days, and the leaves I only tumbled for 1 day, 24 hours. And really the 24 hours was sufficient enough to make them a little bit rounded and not sharp on the edges. So now that I had all my leaves and my stems, I needed to make petals for the sunflowers. I had picked up a few plates from Goodwill that were 99 cents each, and I shaped them into sunflower petals. And this is the shape that I'm looking for, what I'm holding in my hand there. The tool I'm using to shape the glass is called a nipper tool. And this tool I actually got with my set of stained glass tools, but you can purchase it separately if you like. So after I was done cutting them all up, I put them in my small tumbler, and these I tumbled for 6 or 7 days. I tumbled them for about a week. And then when they were done, I rinsed them off. And that gray water that you see there, that's because the water is mixed with grit, and the grit is what helps to smooth the sides of the glass so that they're not sharp and they have a nice rounded edge. And this is what they looked like when they were done. Now, this certainly wasn't enough petals for my sunflower. It was enough for one sunflower, but I wanted to put 3 of them on there. So I was just checking here to see if I had enough. And then I went through all of my other clear glass and started pulling out pieces that I thought were shaped like sunflower petals. And I ended up with quite a few of them. Now, I do have some yellow glass that I had tumbled, but it's not the bright yellow that I wanted. So what I did was I took my Krylon stained glass canary yellow spray paint, and I sprayed all the clear glass. Now, this takes like, oh gosh, I probably sprayed it 5 or 6 times. Let it dry at least a half an hour between. And then I used these beads that I had gotten from Hobby Lobby for the center of the sunflower, and then just started putting the petals all around. Look at what a pretty bright yellow that canary yellow stained glass spray paint makes it. And here I'm showing you the yellow that I have in that container there and in my hand, and this is to the right is the spray painted glass. Now, I know a lot of you probably think you see a lot of yellow vases that you could break up, but most of the yellow vases that you find are just painted on, and if you tumble it, the yellow comes out. Now, if you're doing broken glass art where you don't tumble the glass, you can certainly use a yellow vase and use that for the sunflower petals. But if you, like I said, most of them, if you tumble them, the color comes out and it'll be clear. If you look back, one of the first videos that I did, I talk about the different glass to buy, where to buy it, what glass stays that color after it's been tumbled, and what glass to stay away from if you don't want it to turn out to be clear glass after you tumble it. And I also have one of my first videos shows you the different colors of the Krylon stained glass and sea glass spray paint. And the thing that's wonderful about that stained glass and sea glass spray paint is that it's translucent, whereas the majority of spray paint that I know of is opaque and you cannot see through it. So if you're doing it on glass, you want it to be translucent. So here I started to put a sunflower in the corner, and this one, because it's only showing a quarter of it, it's actually a huge sunflower. And so the petals need to be a lot larger than what I have. So I actually end up breaking up more glass and tumbling that, and of course spray painting again. So after I put a couple petals on, what I do is I go on to my third sunflower. And after I'm done preparing the larger petals, I finish that larger sunflower. I'm not sure if you can tell, but after I put the first layer down, I actually put a second layer on top of the first layer. So next I start going through what I call my glass crumbs. This is when I break glass up and throw it in the tumbler. Some of it turns out real tiny and small, and I just put all those extra pieces in different containers, and when I need them I dump them out and separate them. And in this case I'm pulling out all the tiny little blue pieces, and I'm throwing a couple little clear pieces in here, and these I'm going to use to create some flowers at the bottom of the window. And I actually end up throwing some pearls in there too. I like to use a little jewelry sometimes in my glass art. And then next I start putting it down on the glass window. And honestly, these blue flowers I shaped and I reshaped at least 15 times. First I started by putting 3 on one side. I made them a certain height, and then I made them taller, and then I made them shorter, and then I put 1 on the other side. At one point I had little tiny white flowers and pink flowers, and then I decided I didn't like the white flowers and I took them out, and then I ended up putting pink flowers on there, and then I took a picture of it and sent it to my daughter who lives up in Georgia, and I was saying, what do you think? What does it need? And she told me to put more blue flowers on the other side. She thought it would look prettier that way. So of course I tried that, added a 5th flower, and I think I added then a 6th flower, and honestly I changed it and changed it, but that's kind of what you have to do until you're happy with it. And finally I was happy with it. And now I'm ready to prepare the resin. The resin I'm using for this project is called art resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio resin. When I work with resin, I wear gloves. I use a respirator. It's in your best interest to do it in a well-ventilated area. Open a window, do it outdoors, whichever is easiest. I mix 1 part resin with 1 part hardener. It was a total of 2 cups altogether. You'll notice when you start, it's very clear. And then as you start stirring, it gets cloudy, and then toward the very end it will become clear again, and that's when it's ready to be poured. You're supposed to stir it slowly. The slower you stir it, the less bubbles you'll get. It looks like I'm stirring it real fast, but I just have the video sped way up. As you're stirring, you're supposed to scrape the sides and scrape the bottom to make sure every part of it is mixed. And then again, like I said, when it's clear, after about 3 minutes, it's ready to pour onto the project. When I pour the resin on the project, I usually spoon it over the glass first, and then I go up and around the sides. Now they say that resin is self-leveling, but you really have to make sure it gets into all the corners and along all the edges. It's self-leveling to a certain degree, but you'll find empty spots if you don't do that. So for this project, this 2 cups actually did 5 of the window panes, and I ended up having to mix up another small batch to do that one spot that has the 3 leaves in it. So after I'm done putting the resin on, I use something called a kitchen torch. It's a small kitchen torch. I used to use a heat gun, but I found that the heat gun is more difficult to work with. I mean, it's okay, and I used it for quite a long time, but the kitchen torch just makes things so much easier. So you just go over the areas that has bubbles. Don't hold it in one spot or you can cause something to burn. Just move it around quickly and you'll see the little bubbles start to pop. It can take up to 4 or 5 minutes to get rid of them all. You might have to go back over it again. The one thing I didn't mention that I always have on hand when I'm working with resin is rubbing alcohol. I use it to clean up. A lot of times I'll get drips around the frame, and if you use some rubbing alcohol, as long as it's still wet, you can wipe it off. It'll help to take the resin off your hands if you get it on your hands, on your clothing, on the floor, in your hair. I've had it in my hair before and it takes it out. You just have to do it right away before it dries, of course. After you're done with your project, it's very important that it dry on a flat level surface overnight at temperatures between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. All of the products used in this video can be found under description where you click show more. Thanks for watching. So here I thought I was all finished with the video and I made this little video of me showing you the window. But then I looked at it and I decided it needs something more. So this is what I ended up doing. So I just felt like these areas up at the top needed a little more color and I thought I would try to make some butterflies. I had this really cool glass that I had set aside to use for, I thought they would make great butterfly or dragonfly bodies or petals for flowers. You know, when you break up glass, it breaks up in all different ways. And amazingly, this glass broke up like that. And, then I tumbled it. I also had a bunch of petals left over from the sunflowers that I had sprayed with the spray paint that I could use for butterflies. And honestly, I messed around with these different butterfly wings and butterfly bodies probably for about 15 minutes until I decided what I was going to use. And boy, now that I'm looking back at this pink and yellow one, that's really cute too. That pink glass is the glass I've told the story before of a lady was selling her grandmother's candlestick that was broken. I bought it for $0.25 at a garage sale. Oh, and then I start going through this glass is amazing too. This would be great for butterfly wings. I have 2 different glasses in there, one that has a bunch of different colors in it and then one that's a shimmery gold that are real pretty. And like I said, I messed around with this for at least 15 minutes, if not longer, going back and forth trying to figure out what to use. And then finally I decided on this red glass. This is glass I don't even remember what it started out as before I broke it up. But when I broke it up and tumbled it, the edges came out clear. It was so neat. And so I've used it in a couple of different projects, but I thought they would be cute butterfly wings. And here I found a little bumblebee to put on the top of the sunflower there. And just to let you know, I also put, well, here I'm putting the antennae, I think that's how you pronounce it, on the butterflies. But I also put extra beads in the middle of the sunflowers because I thought it just needed a little bit more. And then I put the resin on the same way I did it to begin with in the beginning. And then I was done for the second time. Hey everyone, hope you guys can see this okay. Finished for the second time. I just wasn't happy with it. I just felt like it needed something else, some more colors, some more flowers, something. So, I ended up with the butterflies. And I appreciate if you guys have any comments or suggestions, maybe for next time. I love to hear from you. I love to see what you guys are working on. Anytime you guys say something, it helps me too if you give me suggestions or comments. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you guys have a great day.